Welcome back to the deep dive. We're here again to take complex sources, really dig into them, and hopefully bring out some potent, accessible knowledge just for you.
Glad to be here.
Today, we're setting the stage for quite a profound exploration. We're looking at an ancient text that really functions as this timeless diagnostic tool for the human spirit. We're talking about Surah Al-Jaathiya.
That's right. Chapter 45 of the Quran, the kneeling. It's a Meccan revelation, and it's incredibly powerful. Our sources really frame it as this meticulous examination of, well, human denial.
Yeah, it's not just tackling theological points, is it? It seems to go deeper, critiquing the actual psychology behind arrogance and heedlessness.
Exactly. The core mission, as presented in the commentaries, is to systematically dismantle the key objections people raise against divine reality, specifically the denial of God's oneness, Tawhid, and the denial of the hereafter, the Akhir.
So it's aiming for a complete overhaul, intellectually and spiritually.
Pretty much. And the names given to the surah really tell you a lot. The main one, Al-Jaathiya, the kneeling, or crouching, comes from this really arresting image in verse 28. You picture every community, every nation just collapsing onto its knees before the divine court.
Wow, that's a powerful visual.
It is, but it's also known as Sharia. Why? Because it's got this unique mention of the Sharia, the ordained way of life for the community. And crucially, it's also called Ad-Dar, which means time.
Time. Why time?
Because it directly confronts and refutes that old materialist philosophy, the one that basically said, hey, it's just impersonal time that creates and destroys everything. The Surah tackles that head on.
Okay, that makes sense. And what really stood out for me looking at the sources was this kind of blueprint for how things go wrong spiritually. It outlines this clear progression, doesn't it?
Yes, a very clear pathological progression. It's almost like a four-stage process described in the analyses. It starts quite simply. A failure to really stop and contemplate the signs, the evidence all around us in creation.
Right. The first step is just not looking properly.
Exactly. And that failure allows arrogance, istikbar, to start growing in the heart, like a weed taking root because the ground wasn't cultivated with reflection.
And once arrogance is there.
Then comes the third stage. The person starts to deify their own internal desires, their hawa. Their whims become their god.
Instead of objective truth, it's just what I want.
Precisely. And the final step. They need to justify this self-worship. So they latch on to an external philosophy, often a cold, materialist one like that worship of time, Ad-Dar, to make it all seem intellectually respectable.
Failure to reflect leads to arrogance, leads to worshiping desire, leads to finding a fancy excuse for it. That's quite the downward spiral.
It is, and it's this journey we need to unpack as we go through the surah.
Okay, so where does this journey begin in the text itself? It needs to establish its own footing first, right?
Absolutely. Before presenting its arguments, the text asserts its authority, and it opens, like 6 other surahs in this part of the Quran, with those mysterious disjointed letters.
Yes. The Awamim group. I know these openings are held in very high regard. The early Muslims apparently had a deep reverence for them. What's the thinking behind these letters? What are they doing there?
Well, the dominant understanding is that they serve as a form of ajaz, which means inimitability, or declaring something inimitable. It's like a divine challenge.
The challenge. How so?
It's as if God is saying, look, this profound, life-altering message, this Quran, it's constructed from the very same simple letters, amim, that you Arabs use every day in your own sophisticated poetry and rhetoric.
Right. You think you're masters of language. Try making something like this with your own letters.
Exactly. It's a subtle but powerful way of saying, this text is beyond human capacity. Its source is divine. It sets the stage. This isn't just another book.
Okay, so the challenge is laid down, and then immediately after Avamim, verse 2 declares the source explicitly.
Yes. The revelation of the book is from Allah Al-Aziz Al-Hakim, the Almighty, the All-Wise.
That pairing seems deliberate. Al-Aziz and Al-Hakim. Let's unpack that, because it feels foundational to how we should approach the text.
It really is. Al-Aziz, the Almighty, the exalted in might, establishes absolute, unchallengeable authority. This message comes from a power you cannot overcome. So rejecting it isn't just disagreement, it's futile defiance against overwhelming power.
Okay, so that covers the might aspect. What about Al-Hakim?
Al-Hakim, the All-Wise, affirms that the revelation isn't just powerful, it's also perfect in its wisdom, its purpose, its structure, its guidance. There's no flaw, no error, no imbalance. So rejecting it isn't just defying power, it's also denying perfect wisdom. It's fundamentally irrational.
So it demands submission because of its source's unstoppable power, but it also invites contemplation because of its inherent perfect wisdom.
Beautifully put. That's the framework.
All right, authority established. Now, the Surah doesn't just stay in the realm of abstract authority. It immediately points outwards, connecting the divine text to the observable world.
Yes, it transitions straight from the source of revelation to the evidence embedded in creation. And what's fascinating, as you mentioned, is that it's not just a random list of look at this, look at that. There's a structure, a kind of pedagogical ascent, you could call it.
A pedagogical ascent, I like that, meaning it teaches us how to look, step by step.
Precisely. It offers a clear epistemology, a theory of knowledge that completely refutes the notion that faith is somehow opposed to observation or reason. Quite the opposite. Studying the natural world is presented as vital for deepening conviction.
But with a condition.
Yes. The key insight is that the benefit you get from looking at the signs depends entirely on your internal state, your intellectual readiness, your spiritual openness.
Well, the universe is like a book, but you need the right glasses to read it properly. Different people will see different levels of meaning based on their own capacity.
That's a great analogy. The Surah essentially says you'll grasp the depth of the sign that your heart and mind are prepared to perceive.
Okay, let's walk through these levels it outlines. What's the first level, the starting point?
Level 1 is addressed to the mu'minin, the believers. For them, the primary signs are vast, overarching ones in the heavens and the earth. The sheer scale, the existence of the cosmos.
So this is the baseline, seeing the universe and just having that initial sense that, wow, this can't all be an accident, a general affirmation of God's power.
Exactly. It's that foundational awe. But the surah doesn't stop there. It invites deeper certainty.
Right, level 2. This is for a specific group. Kwamin yukinon, a people who seek or possess yakin, sure faith, certainty. Where does it direct their gaze?
It brings the focus much closer, much more intimate. And in your own creation and what he disperses of moving creatures, certainty comes through introspection and the biological wonders right under our noses.
Our own bodies, the complexity of life, the sheer diversity of animals.
Yes, it moves from the distant stars and galaxies down to the undeniable, tangible miracle of your own existence, your own biology. You look at your hand, you think about how your body works, that's meant to generate a deeper level of certainty. It's harder to dismiss something so immediate.
Okay, from the cosmic to the personal, and then there's a third level.
Yes, level 3. This requires the most intellectual engagement. It's for Kwamin Yaklin, people who use reason, who apply their akal, their intellect.
And what kinds of signs are highlighted for them? It's not just things anymore, is it?
Exactly. It shifts from observing objects, stars, animals, ourselves, to understanding systems, dynamic, complex, interconnected processes. The signs here are the alternation of night and day, the provision, meaning rain, he sends down from the sky, giving life to the earth after its death, and the turning of the winds.
Ah, so we're talking about cycles, laws, the interconnectedness of weather patterns, the water cycle, the ecological balance.
Precisely. Grasping these requires more than just seeing. It requires understanding. It involves intellectual comprehension, seeing the wisdom, the precision, the fine-tuning behind these natural laws. It's the difference between, say, looking at a beautiful car and understanding the complex engineering under the hood.
That's a really powerful progression. It shows faith isn't about shutting down your brain. It's presented as a journey that actually gets deeper and more robust. The more you observe, the more you reason, the more sophisticated your understanding of the world becomes.
Absolutely. The evidence isn't just there, it's layered, offering deeper insights to those who engage more deeply.
Okay, so the evidence is laid out both in the revealed text and in the observable universe, catering to different levels of understanding. Logically, the next question is, well, why doesn't everyone accept it, if it's so clear?
Exactly. And the Surah pivots right there. Having presented the overwhelming evidence, it moves into diagnosis. Why the rejection? And the answer isn't intellectual deficiency. It's identified squarely as a moral and psychological disease. Kibr, arrogance.
That makes sense. If the facts are clear, the problem must lie elsewhere. And verse 6 seems to throw down the gauntlet on this.
It does. It poses this incredibly potent rhetorical question. After hearing these verses of Allah, these clear signs, then in what statement, after Allah and his signs, will they believe?
Meaning, if you reject God's own direct speech and the undeniable evidence woven into reality itself, the cosmos, your own body, the natural systems, what else could possibly convince you? What other philosophy or statement could possibly be more authoritative or evident?
Precisely. The implication is, the truth has been made as plain as it can possibly be. Any rejection after this point isn't coming from a place of honest seeking or lack of information. It's coming from somewhere else.
And the surah immediately points to where. It pronounces wail woe, or ruin upon every fucking athim, a sinful liar.
Let's break down those terms because they're specific. A fuck isn't just someone who tells an occasional lie. It implies someone who habitually invents falsehoods, who fabricates. A master of deceit, almost.
Okay, so deep intellectual dishonesty. And a theme.
The athim means deeply steeped in sin, someone whose character is fundamentally marked by wrongdoing and immorality. So the profile is someone who is both intellectually corrupt and morally corrupt. The two feed each other.
And the text doesn't just label them, it describes their specific behavior when confronted with the truth.
Yes, this is key. Verse 8 says, he hears the verses of Allah recited to him. Then he persists, yuru in denial with arrogance, mustakbiran, as though he had not heard them.
That word yuru persists. That sounds active, deliberate. It's not just passive ignorance.
It's absolutely active. It's a willful, conscious decision to disregard the evidence, driven by this internal arrogance, istikbar. He acts like the message never even registered. And then verse 9 adds another layer. And when he learns something of our verses, he takes them in mockery. Huzuan.
Mockery. That feels like a defense mechanism.
It absolutely is. Think about it. If you're confronted with a truth that fundamentally challenges your ego, your lifestyle, your desires, and you can't refute it logically, what do? You have two options. Change yourself or attack the message and the messenger.
So mockery is the weapon used to devalue the truth because the ego can't handle submitting to it. Belittle the source to protect yourself.
Exactly. And it links directly back to the Prophet Muhammad's own definition of arrogance, peace be upon him. He defined kibr as having two components: rejecting the truth, badarlak, which is exactly what the mustakbir here does, and belittling people, gamainanas. Mockery is a form of belittling the truth and those who bring it.
So the core lesson here is profound. The biggest obstacle isn't a lack of proof. It's this spiritual sickness, this arrogant heart that simply refuses to accept what it knows deep down is true.
That's the diagnosis. The rejection is volitional, stemming from a corrupted inner state.
And given that the crime is so deeply rooted in rejecting majesty and truth with arrogance and mockery, the punishment described seems, well, fitting. It's not just random pain. It's framed as reciprocal justice.
Yes, the principle of al-jaza min jins al-amal, recompense matching the nature of the deed, is crystal clear here. They acted with istikbar, arrogance, puffing themselves up. So verse 9 promises them a adabun muhin, a humiliating torment.
So the punishment directly counteracts the sin. Pride is met with humiliation, stripping the ego bare.
Precisely. And because they took the verses Huzuan as a joke, something to be mocked and disregarded, verse 11 mentions hellfire surrounding them and promises them a habernanim, a great torment, elsewhere described as alim, painful. Their dismissal of the divine is met with overwhelming, inescapable, painful reality. Their worldly status, their alliances, the things they took pride in, all rendered utterly useless.
It's like the punishment is tailor-made to dismantle the very foundations of their denial. Their inflated ego, and their contempt for the sacred. A spiritual and existential bankruptcy.
Perfectly stated.
Okay, so after diagnosing the sickness of denial and outlining its consequences, the surah seems to shift tone again. It moves back towards reminding believers, and perhaps all humanity, of God's immense generosity.
Yes, it pivots from the psychology of rejection to the reality of divine benevolence. It's like saying, despite this denial, look the constant grace you are immersed in. And this brings us to a really important theological concept, taskir.
Taskir. You mentioned this earlier. It means subjugation, or making something serviceable.
Exactly. Verse 12 states, it is Allah who subjected Sakhara the sea for you, so that ships may sail upon it by his command. And verse 13 continues, and he has subjected Sakhara to you, whatever is in the heavens and whatever is on the earth, all of it is from him.
Let's explore what that really implies. If you just look at the universe as, say, a purely materialist system, it often seems indifferent, maybe even hostile. Survival feels like a constant struggle against randomness.
Right. But Tasker presents the complete opposite view. It asserts that the fundamental laws governing the universe, gravity, physics, chemistry, biology, are not random accidents. They are divinely calibrated and made serviceable specifically for human benefit and the benefit of life.
So the fact that the sea carries ships instead of just swallowing them, the fact that the atmosphere protects us, the fact that plants grow, that celestial bodies move predictably, this isn't luck.
According to this concept, no. It's purposeful design. The universe is presented as a system intentionally set up to support and sustain life, particularly human life. It's a manifestation of divine grace and wisdom, not a random cosmic accident. It's fundamentally a welcoming environment, not a hostile one.
And the Surah says that realizing this, understanding this task here, is itself a sign for a specific group.
Yes, for Kwame Yatfakarun, a people who reflect or think deeply. Recognizing this underlying purpose and grace isn't superficial. It requires genuine contemplation.
And what should be the natural human response when you grasp this? When you see the universe not as chaos, but as a calibrated gift.
Two fundamental responses are demanded by this realization. First, as the verse implies, tafakkur, deep reflection, engaging your intellect to understand these systems, the wisdom behind them. It encourages scientific inquiry in a way.
And the second?
Profound gratitude, shukr. Recognizing that your very existence, the air you breathe, the water you drink, the laws that make life possible, it's all an intricate gift from the Creator. This demands not just intellectual understanding, but deep, heartfelt thankfulness.
Reflection and gratitude. That
Yeah.
makes sense. And this understanding of divine grace then seems to flow directly into a specific ethical instruction for the believers, especially relevant in their difficult situation in Mecca.
Yes, verse 14, it's a remarkable command. Tell the believers to forgive those who do not hope for or expect the days of Allah.
Forgive the very people who are likely mocking them, persecuting them, denying the core of their faith. That sounds incredibly difficult.
It is, and commentators like Ibn Kathir point out that this verse was revealed early on, during the Meccan period, before Muslims were given permission to physically defend themselves. So it demanded extraordinary patience and self-control. They had to rise above the conflict.
What's the rationale given in the verse for this forgiveness? It's not just be nice, is it?
No, the verse continues, so that He, Allah, may recompense people according to what they have earned.
So the forgiveness isn't about letting them off the hook. It's an act of delegation.
Exactly. It's an expression of profound trust in Allah's ultimate and perfect justice. By choosing to forgive the personal slight now, the believer is essentially saying, I trust Allah to handle the ultimate reckoning. I will maintain my ethical standard, and He will ensure perfect justice is done in His time. It frees the believer from the cycle of revenge.
That reframes forgiveness completely. It's not weakness, it's confidence in divine justice. It keeps the believer anchored to a higher principle, preventing them from mirroring the behavior of their opponents.
Precisely. It's about maintaining moral integrity even under pressure, trusting that accountability is guaranteed.
And the theme of accountability leads perfectly into the next verse, verse 15, which feels like a foundational principle for everything.
Yes, it's the bedrock of individual responsibility. Man mila alaya fali nafsi wa man asafa alaya. Whoever does righteousness, it is for the benefit of his own soul, and whoever does evil, it is against it. Then it adds, then to your Lord you will be returned.
So actions have consequences, but those consequences ultimately land squarely on the individual.
Completely. Allah is Al-Ghani, the self-sufficient. Our obedience doesn't benefit Him, and our disobedience doesn't harm Him. The entire system of morality, reward, and punishment is for our own development and ultimate outcome. This principle is incredibly empowering.
How so?
It demolishes fatalism. You are not just a leaf blown by the wind. Your choices matter profoundly. Your actions directly shape your own eternal future. It places the responsibility and the potential for salvation firmly in the hands of the individual. Every good deed benefits you. Every bad deed harms you. And the final return to God is where that account is settled.
Okay, so we've covered the signs, the psychology of denial, divine grace, and individual responsibility. Now, the Surah seems to zoom out a bit, using history as a lesson.
Yes, it shifts from individual principles to a collective case study, using the children of Israel as a powerful historical warning, particularly for the nascent Muslim community.
What does it highlight about their story?
Verses 16 and 17 start by listing the immense favors Allah bestowed upon them. It's quite a list. Al-Kitab, the book, the Torah. Al-Fliq, wisdom or judgment. Nubuwah, prophethood. They were given good provisions, and even Faqtalamamala Alanamin, we preferred them above the worlds of their time. And they were given bayinat, clear proofs or signs.
So they had everything. Clear guidance, divine leadership, resources, even a position of honor. They were set up for success.
Completely. But then comes the crucial turn. Despite having all this clarity, verse 17 states they fell into disputes and differences amongst themselves. And the text is emphatic about when this happened. Min badi majahum alim, after knowledge had come to them.
So their downfall wasn't because the message was unclear or because they lacked information. It happened after they knew better.
Precisely. And the cause is explicitly identified. Bagian bainahum. This word begyan is key. It carries meanings of envious rivalry, mutual jealousy, selfish ambition, rebellion, or wanting to transgress against each other out of malice.
Wow. So it wasn't primarily a theological disagreement that tore them apart. It was internal moral decay, jealousy, infighting, wanting to dominate each other within their own community.
That's the core diagnosis presented here. They allowed their internal desires, their egos, their rivalries to fracture their unity and corrupt their practice, despite having clear divine guidance. They essentially turned on each other out of selfish motives.
And this serves as a direct, stark warning to the Muslim community, and indeed any community that receives divine guidance.
Absolutely. The implicit message is, look what happened to them. They had the knowledge, but they lacked the moral integrity and unity to preserve it. Don't let begging internal discord, envy, power struggles destroy your community and cause you to forfeit God's favor, just as they did. Knowledge alone isn't enough. It needs ethical application and unity.
It shows how easily human failings can undermine even the clearest divine gifts.
It does. And their failure, this historical precedent of guidance being corrupted by internal factors, sets the stage perfectly for the necessity of a final, unambiguous, protected path. Which leads us to verse 18.
This verse seems particularly significant. It contains the word shirai.
Yes, and remarkably, according to many scholars, this is the only place in the entire Quran where the noun shura is used in this specific way, referring to the comprehensive, ordained way of life given to the Prophet Muhammad and his followers.
The only time. That makes it stand out. What's the deeper meaning embedded in the word shura itself?
Linguistically, the root refers to a path leading directly to a watering hole, a source of water essential for life in the desert environment. So Sharia inherently signifies a clear, straight, unambiguous path to life, sustenance, and spiritual purity.
A direct route to the source of life. That's a powerful image, especially contrasted with the Israelites getting lost in disputes after knowledge came.
Exactly. It implies that this final Sharia day is designed to be that clear, life-giving path, protected from the kind of internal corruption and deviation that plagued previous communities.
And how is the community instructed to relate to this Sharia in verse 18?
There's a crucial twofold command. First, the positive, fatabi, so follow it. Simple, direct adherence to this clear path. Second, the negative, which directly addresses the root of the previous failure. Wala tatabi alabi alena leyalamun.
And do not follow the desires of those who do not know.
Again, those base desires, whims, passions we saw earlier as the internal idol. And here it's linked to ignorance, layalamun.
Yes. The Sharia is presented as the divinely provided safeguard against the two main corrupting influences we've been tracking throughout the surah. 1. Hawa, the internal pull of unchecked personal desires, ambitions, and egos that leads to begyan. And 2. Shah, the external influence of ignorance, the pressures and ideologies of those who lack true knowledge and operate outside divine guidance. So follow the clear path, and don't get sidetracked by your own whims or by the ignorant agendas around you. That's the formula for staying on track.
That's the essence of it. It's about maintaining focus and integrity, both internally and externally.
And verse 19 seems to promise a reward for this adherence protection.
It does. It draws a sharp contrast. It says the unjust, holy men, are allies of one another. Their bonds are based on shared wrongdoing or fleeting worldly interests. But then it declares, Wallahu waliyul muttaqin, and Allah is the protector, wali, of the muttaqin.
The muttaqin, those who have taqwa, God consciousness, piety, awareness.
Yes. True security, true protection, true alliance comes not from aligning with other flawed humans based on desire, but from aligning oneself with Allah through conscious adherence to his guidance, the Sharia.
And the surah then reinforces the Quran's role in achieving this state.
Verse 20 concludes this section beautifully. This Quran is bala for mankind. Bailar means lights, insights, means of clear perception, and a guidance, hudan, and a mercy, rama, for a people who are certain, kwamen yukin.
So the Quran itself provides the insight needed to follow the Sharia, the guidance to navigate life, and the mercy that results from living in accordance with divine wisdom. But again, the benefit is especially for those who attain that state of certainty, Yakin.
Exactly. It's the complete package, the historical warning, the clear path forward, Sharia, the command to follow it while avoiding internal desires and external ignorance, and the promise of divine protection and insight for those who do so with certainty.
Right. This feels like we're reaching the intellectual core of the argument now. directly challenging the worldview that denies the hereafter.
Yes, this section tackles the rational and psychological flaws underpinning that denial head-on, and it starts, interestingly, with a moral argument, a question of basic fairness.
Verse 21 poses this incredibly direct question, doesn't it? Or do those who commit evil deeds think that we will make them equal to those who believe, and do righteous deeds make them equal in their life and their death?
It's a question aimed right at the conscience. Can you really believe that a just and wise creator would treat the person who spent their life spreading corruption and injustice the same as the person who strove for goodness and faith, especially if both just cease to exist at death?
If death is the ultimate equalizer and there's no accountability beyond it, then morality seems, well, pointless in a cosmic sense. Why bother being good if the outcome is identical?
Exactly. The verse answers its own question with condemnation. Sama yakumun. Evil is the judgment they make. The very idea is presented as irrational and morally offensive.
Because it implies the creator is unjust or indifferent to justice?
Precisely. It contradicts the fundamental nature of God as wise and just. And that's why the next verse, verse 22, immediately follows up by stating the principle of creation. And Allah created the heavens and the earth bilak.
Bilak, with truth, with purpose, with justice inherent in the design.
Yes, and so that every soul may be recompensed for what it earned and they will not be wronged. Creation itself isn't meaningless or random, it's imbued with purpose, and a core part of that purpose is the eventual triumph of justice. A final reckoning isn't just possible, it's a moral and rational necessity for creation to fulfill its alak, its inherent truth and purpose.
So, belief in the hereafter isn't just presented as, say, a comforting idea. It's framed as the essential logical and moral conclusion of believing in a purposeful, just creator. Without it, the whole system unravels.
Absolutely. It's the linchpin of a coherent moral universe.
Okay, so that's the external rational argument for justice. But the Surah, as we've seen, always connects the external denial to an internal problem. And verse 23 seems to pinpoint the ultimate internal idol.
Yes, this verse is incredibly profound and often cited. Have you seen the one who takes as his god his own hawa, lust, whim, desire?
Taking your hawa, your own desires, as your illa, your god. That's the ultimate inversion, isn't it?
It's the absolute core of self-worship. Hawa represents those unchecked impulses, passions, ambitions, whims, whatever the lower self desires at any given moment. To make that your ilah means you grant your own desires ultimate sovereignty. You obey them above all else, without reference to reason, scripture, or consequence. Your personal whim becomes the ultimate authority in your life.
You become your own god, in effect. Whatever I want is the highest law. There's a hadith mentioned in some commentaries about this being the most hated deity worshipped beneath the sky.
Yes, that highlights how dangerous this internal idolatry is considered. It's not about bowing to a stone statue. It's about bowing to the demands of your own ego and desires.
And the consequence described for this state is terrifying. Allah lets him go astray, Allah ilm upon knowledge, and seals his hearing in his heart and puts a covering over his sight.
That phrase, alay ilm, is chilling. It means he goes astray knowingly, or despite having knowledge. This isn't someone who is simply ignorant. They might be intelligent, they might even recognize the signs we discussed in part 1. But their enslavement to their hawa has rendered that knowledge powerless.
So the desire overrides the intellect.
Completely. The commitment to fulfilling those base desires acts like a spiritual disease that seals the faculties of perception. They become deaf to guidance, their hearts become hardened against truth, their eyes become blind to the signs, not because the guidance isn't there, but because their internal compass is deliberately pointing towards satisfying the self at all costs. They've chosen desire over truth.
And this internal state of worshiping desire needs an external philosophy to justify it, to make it seem rational, which brings us back to the Duriya.
Exactly. Verse 24 quotes their creed, وَمَا يُلِكُنَا إِلَّا الدَّارِ, and nothing destroys us except ad-dar, time.
This was the view of those pre-Islamic materialists you mentioned earlier.
Yes. They looked at the world, saw cycles of life and death, fortune and misfortune, and concluded it was all just the impersonal, relentless march of time. Time brings things into existence, time wears them down, time eventually destroys them. No creator, no purpose, no accountability, just time.
It's a very convenient philosophy if you don't want to be held responsible for your actions.
Extremely convenient. It removes God from the equation entirely. But the Quran's critique is devastatingly simple. وَمَا لَهُمْ بِذَلِكَ مِنْ عِلْمٍ إِنْ هُمْ إِلَّا يَظُنُّونَ. And they have no knowledge of that. They only conjecture on them.
So their grand materialist philosophy isn't based on solid proof or deep understanding. It's just guesswork, speculation.
That's the assessment. It's presented as an unfounded assumption, a philosophical stance chosen perhaps for its convenience, not for its factual basis. It ignores the intricate design, the task here, the purpose woven into creation that points towards a wise creator, not just blind, impersonal time.
And when confronted with the message of resurrection, their only argument is basically a demand for a miracle on their terms.
Right. Verse 25 says their only argument is, Tubiaba ina in kuntum aidikun. Bring back our forefathers if you are truthful.
Like a challenge. If you claim resurrection is real, prove it now. Resurrect my dead ancestors right here.
Yes, demanding a disruption of the entire cosmic order just to satisfy their skepticism. But the response in verse 26 is perfectly logical. Qualilahuyukum tuma yumitukum tuma yamaukum ila yami shamati la raibafas. Say, a lie gives you life, then causes you to die, then he will assemble you for the day of resurrection, about which there is no doubt.
Meaning the same power that initiated the cycle, creating you from nothing, giving you life, determining your death, that power inherently has the capability to bring you all back together for the final judgment. Resurrection isn't some impossible magic trick. It's the logical completion of the process initiated by the Creator.
Exactly. And it happens on his timeline at the appointed day, not as an on-demand performance. The argument basically says, if you accept God's power to start life, you must accept his power to culminate it in resurrection and judgment. Time isn't the ultimate power, it's merely the stage upon which the Creator's plan unfolds.
It reminds me of that Hadith Qudsi where Allah says, the son of Adam abuses me, he curses time, but I am time, Adar. In my hand are the night and the day. Attributing ultimate power to time is seen as a fundamental misunderstanding of where true power lies.
Precisely. These materialist philosophies, ancient or modern, are ultimately presented as sophisticated ways of avoiding the reality of a creator and the inevitability of accountability, often rooted in that internal worship of Hawa.
Okay, so we've gone through the science, the psychology, the ethics, the history, the refutation of materialism. Now the Sutta reaches its climax. The inevitable conclusion to all this, the Day of Judgment itself.
Yes, the final act. All the threads converge here. Arrogance confronted, justice delivered, sovereignty fully manifest. The tone shifts from argument and diagnosis to the stark reality of the final confrontation.
And verse 27 sets the ultimate stage, reminding everyone who is in charge.
And to Allah belongs the dominion, mulk, of the heavens and the earth. And the day the hour occurs that day, the falsifiers will lose. Absolute, undisputed sovereignty. There are no other powers, no appeals, no negotiations possible on that day.
And then comes the scene that gives the Sutta its name, the defining image in verse 28.
وَتَرَكُلَ ummatin Jaathiya, and you will see every nation kneeling. Jaathiya on their knees, humbled, perhaps in terror, perhaps in submission, but definitely brought low.
This is the ultimate shattering of that istikbar, the arrogance we talked about. The pride that defined the deniers in life is just gone.
Completely obliterated. Those who refuse to willingly bow in humility and worship during their lives are now forced onto their knees by the sheer, overwhelming reality and majesty of the divine presence and the impending judgment. It's an involuntary submission that exposes the foolishness of their earthly pride.
And this isn't just chaos. It's a court proceeding with meticulous records.
Absolutely. The verse continues. Kulu ummatin tudoi ila kitabiho. Every nation will be summoned to its record. Each community, and by implication each individual within it, will be confronted with the full account of their lives.
And the accuracy of this record is guaranteed. No room for dispute.
Verse 29 leaves no doubt about that. It says the record itself will speak. Hada kitabuna yaniku alaikum bilak. This, our record, speaks about you with truth, and it adds the reason for its accuracy. Ina kuna nastansiku ma kuntum tamalun. Indeed, we were having recorded what you used to do.
In a sense of like making a perfect copy, meticulously transcribing everything.
Exactly. It implies constant, perfect, real-time recording. Every action, every word, perhaps even every intention. Nothing is lost, nothing is forgotten, nothing is distorted. This directly refutes the materialist idea that actions just vanish. No, they are preserved perfectly for this day. Accountability is absolute.
So the court is assembled, the records are presented. What happens next? The judgment itself.
Yes, the great divergence. Based entirely on that accurate record, the paths split dramatically. Verse 30 describes the fate of the righteous. Then, as for those who believed and did righteous deeds, their Lord will admit them into his mercy, Rama.
Entry into divine mercy, and that's called
ذَلِكَ هُوَ الْفَوْزُ الْمُبِينُ. That is the clear success, the evident triumph. Simple, profound.
And then the fate of the disbelievers.
For them, the judgment begins with a reminder of their crime, verse 31. But as for those who disbelieved, it will be said, "Were not. My verses recited to you, but you were arrogant, fastakbartum, and became a people who were criminals, mujrimin. Their core sin arrogance leading to criminality is laid bare."
Istikbar again. It follows them right to the end.
It defines their rejection. And then comes the sentence, verse 34, which is perhaps one of the most terrifying examples of reciprocal justice in the Quran. فَلَا يَوْمَ نَنْسَاكُمْ كَمَا نَسِيتُمْ لِقَاءَ يَوْمِكُمْ هَذَا. So this day, we shall forget you as you forgot the meeting of this day of yours.
We will forget you, as you forgot. That's chilling. What does forget mean here? Not that Allah literally forgets, surely.
No, commentators explain it means abandonment. Just as they deliberately ignored, disregarded, and lived as if this day didn't exist, Allah will now abandon them to their fate, withdraw His mercy and attention from them in their moment of most desperate need. It's the ultimate consequence of their lifelong heedlessness. They made themselves irrelevant to God's mercy by their choices.
So abandonment is the direct reciprocation for their willful negligence and denial.
Precisely. And verse 35 spells out the reasons for their ruin explicitly. That is because you took the verses of Allah in jest, huzuan, and you were deluded, gratkum, by the worldly life. Mockery and delusion, the two key tools of their self-destruction.
They laughed at the truth and were fooled by the temporary glitter of this world.
And now reality hits. Their final abode is the fire, and they have no helpers.
It's a devastating conclusion for the path of denial. But the surah doesn't end on that note of judgment, does it? It seems to circle back.
No, beautifully, it concludes by returning to praise and the affirmation of ultimate majesty. Verse 36 is a powerful declaration. Falilahi lumd, so all praise is due to Allah, followed by His titles. Rab is samawati wa, Rab ilaro, Rab ilamen, Lord of the heavens and Lord of the earth, Lord of all worlds.
Connecting back to the very signs in the heavens and earth that the deniers ignored at the beginning, all praise belongs to the Lord of those signs.
Exactly. And then, the final verse, verse 37, delivers the ultimate profound irony, bringing the entire theme of arrogance full circle.
What does it say?
Wallahu de kibriya fis samawati wal ard. And to Him alone belongs all majesty, al-kibriya in the heavens and the earth. And it ends by reaffirming His names, wa huwa laziz olikim, and He is the Almighty, the All-Wise.
Al-Kibriya, majesty, grandeur, greatness. That's the very quality the arrogant mustakbirin were trying to claim for themselves, right? Their istikbar was a futile attempt to usurp kibriya.
Precisely. That's the stunning conclusion. The surah ends by affirming that the very attribute the arrogant foolishly sought to possess, greatness, majesty, belongs exclusively and absolutely to Allah. The human attempt to grasp kibriya for oneself leads only to humiliation, to being Jaathiya, forced onto one's knees in abasement.
Whereas true honor, true elevation, comes from recognizing that al-kibriya belongs only to Him and adopting that posture of willing, humble submission and worship in this life.
That is the final overarching lesson. Submit willingly now, or be humbled involuntarily later. The choice defines your eternity.
Wow. That's an incredibly powerful synthesis of the whole surah. It really does function as that diagnostic tool you mentioned at the start. It maps out the path away from truth, rooted in ignoring signs and nurturing arrogance, and contrasts it with the path towards truth, built on reflection, gratitude, and submission to divine guidance.
It fundamentally shows that genuine faith is supported and deepened by reason, by observation, by reflecting on the universe and the self. Whereas disbelief, ultimately, isn't an intellectual position based on evidence, but a moral and psychological one sustained by internal corruption, primarily that disease of arrogance, kibr.
So the core choice it presents to us, to you listening, is stark. It boils down to istikbar versus kibr. Human arrogance versus recognizing divine majesty. Will you choose in this life to adopt that posture of humility, reflection, gratitude willingly, or risk being forced into that posture of Jaathiya, kneeling in terror and regret in the next?
That's the fundamental question the surah leaves us with.
It certainly sets a high bar, ethically and intellectually. Which leads me to a final thought, something for you to perhaps mull over after we finish. The surah clearly identifies those two main drivers of deviation: internal hawa, unchecked desire, and external yal, ignorance or follow the ways of the ignorant. How might we see echoes of this today?
That's a relevant question.
Think about modern philosophies, perhaps extreme forms of individualism or certain types of materialism, where the desires of the sovereign self are placed above almost everything else. Could these be seen as modern, perhaps more sophisticated intellectual justifications for essentially worshiping Hawa, just like the Dariya tried to justify their denial through the philosophy of time.
It's certainly food for thought. Are contemporary ideologies sometimes just new masks for the old idols?
And if the biggest battle truly is against that internal Elah, the God of our own whims and desires, what does that realization demand from us? What immediate, concrete steps does that place on our personal accountability, right here, right now?
A challenging reflection indeed. How do we ensure our intellect guides our desires rather than the other way around?
Exactly. Something to think about. Thank you so much for walking us through this incredibly rich and challenging surah.
The pleasure was mine. It's a profound text.
And thank you, our listeners, for joining us for this deep dive into Surah Al-Jaathiya. We hope it provided some valuable insights. We look forward to diving into the sources with you again soon.